Welcome to another edition of Interviews from the WNUR Folk Show. Here's Sue Kessell's interview with Clay Eals about his brand new Steve Goodman biography called Steve Goodman, Facing the Music. This interview was originally broadcast on Sunday, May 20th, 2007. You can listen to other interviews in our series of podcasts by going to our website at www.wnur.org/folk and look for the podcast link along the left-hand side of the page. Some of our most recent interviews have been with Kat Eggleston, Zoe Mulford, David Massengill, Mark Dvorak, and Dar Williams. Enjoy!
Yes, I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans.
So I'm very pleased, and we'll probably run out of time, and I'll be very frustrated to welcome to WNUR Clay Eals, who is from Seattle, who has written, I would say, the definitive work on Steve Goodman, and this has been the Steve Goodman weekend at the Old Town School, and it's the first of a number of special events associated with the 50th anniversary of the Old Town School. There's going to be several more activities. I believe the end of the summer there's something planned. Also in the fall there's going to be what they're going to call Homecoming Weekend, and it's going to culminate with a big benefit at I think it's Orchestra Hall on December 3rd, which is actually the 50th anniversary, the date that the Old Town School at least opened in Old Town on December 3rd, 1957. So it's exciting, and certainly an exciting way to start out the celebration with a celebration of Steve Goodman's life. And Steve was a student for at least a short time at Old Town School. And welcome, Clay. Now that's the longest introduction.
Thank you, Sue. Steve was a student there for just a few weeks in the summer 1962.
All right. Now, maybe we should pretend, I think there might be actually a couple people who don't know who Steve was. So maybe we should just briefly.
Well, you know, the trick about Steve Goodman is that people know who Steve Goodman is. They just don't know it themselves.
Correct.
I mean, everybody knows the city of New Orleans, whether it's from Arlo's version or from scores of other artists. And if you're a Buffett fan, a number of Buffett songs are really Steve Goodman songs. The ultimate country and western song, David Allan Coe made a hit back in 1975. That's a Steve Goodman and John Prine song. And then, of course, if you're a Cub fan,
oh yes,
you've got songs that are classic.
So when did he live? And when he passed away, much too young.
He lived 36 years. He died in 1984. He was born and raised in Albany Park, and then moved out to Niles, went to Park Ridge High School, Maine East High School with Hillary Clinton, and he was a Chicago guy his whole life up until the last 4 years when he moved just south of Los Angeles to Seal Beach.
Okay, now, of course, you all can't see what I'm looking at, but I'm looking at an almost 800-page heavy book here.
I'm amazed you can pick it up.
Well, it takes two hands, and it takes two hands to hold it. Now, you're from Seattle, correct?
Yes.
You're a journalist?
Yes, longtime journalist. I've got ink in my veins, and worked for 4 different newspapers and taught journalism. And you know, when I die and they cut me open, there's not going to be any blood. It's just black ink coming out.
All right. Well, you know, the inevitable question, what possessed you to take on this? I mean, you're not from Chicago, and the family didn't come and say, hey, write this. So what?
That's an interesting word, possession. I'll have to remember that. Put that in my vocabulary. I almost feel like I was possessed with this idea.
Have to.
I mean, why write the 50th book on Elvis or somebody? He just got me. I mean, I had his records. I saw him on a Chicago-based show called Soundstage, but then when you got to see him live, man, he could get you, just like Steve Martin told me. He said he'd have you in 30 seconds.
Wow. Well, I mean, you mentioned in here you interviewed everybody. It's all on the back. He knows his book well. And how many years did you work on it?
The better part of a decade. Depends on where you start counting. Almost 10 years ago, there was a tribute concert to Goodman at Medina Temple. And I was taking notes then. It was my first trip to Chicago, and I've been back 10 times to do a lot of research.
Well, wait a minute. You still didn't say why you decided to do it. You just thought because there wasn't anything on it, and
the guy deserved a book. There's a glaring need for the book. I mean, he was the hub of the Chicago folk scene, but he also was such a key figure nationally. The celebrities you referred to, the people who are much better known than Goodman, all count Goodman as huge influences, and they have tremendous affection for him. Everybody from Christopherson to Bonnie Raitt to Randy Newman to certainly John Prine, close friend, to the list just goes on and on.
Well, and did you think when you started out you were going to it would be this big? I mean, you could do a nice little coffee table, book with like 100 pages.
I actually had a guy tell me last fall, some people want to write a book that you can't put down, but you've written one you can't pick up.
Right.
And, no, I didn't have any idea it would be 800 pages, but I did know that, one of the great, it's a wonderful journalistic challenge to do a book on somebody that there hasn't been a book done on. And, I knew that because Goodman is not a household word, I kind of had the mantle on my shoulders that I wanted to do a complete job, the comprehensive job, because it may be the only book on him, so I better get it right.
And so many people knew him and saw him and probably counted him as their friend. Did you just put the word out there and say, hey, I'm going to do this book, come, can I talk to you? Or
it's just one thing comes after another, and your credibility comes from whom you've already interviewed. So I was constantly updating my interviewee list and circulating it when I would seek interviews with people. And, I think the lesson of Goodman's life is that we're not meant to be just isolated. We are meant to connect one-on-one with people and, really get engaged with other people in this life. And that's certainly what he did. And that's why there are so many sources in the book. I would talk to people, and invariably at the end of the interview, they'd say, "You got to talk to X, Y, and Z," and it fanned out like a chain letter.
I'm sure. Well, did you find people like Steve Martin and Randy Newman accessible to it, or did they have to have?
Well, the thing about people like that is that often they get interview requests all the time.
I would guess so.
But it's to talk about themselves, and they get tired of that, and they say the same things. And this is almost like a repressed emotion, repressed memory. People were so fond of Goodman, and they hadn't really talked about him in 20 or 30 years in any significant degree, and along comes a guy who wants them to tell what they think, and the heart comes out on the sleeve.
Well, he opened for Steve Martin at the height of Steve Martin's comedy career when he was doing all the crazy.
Sure, people think of today's Steve as a film star, Steve Martin, but he was the wild and crazy guy, and he was hell to open for. He went through opening acts who got booed because people were fanatic about Steve Martin. We don't have a phenomenon today like Steve Martin was 30 years ago. And really, Steve Goodman became the ideal opening act for him. Steve Martin saw that he could get people right away, and he opened for him more than 200 times.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And Randy Newman, did he open for him?
Oh, sure. Everybody knows mostly Randy Newman for his hit Short People. Well, he had the ultimate short person opening for him. And, Goodman always, he said, Randy Newman is an equal opportunity employer. I'm going to have to get stilts for this gig, he said.
Oh, dear. Well, Randy's no giant himself. He's not the tallest person.
And, the thing about Randy, when you go to a Randy Newman concert, you see a giant grand piano, and you see maybe half of Randy Newman's head, and he's looking down.
Right.
And the opening act, Steve Goodman, is up there literally dancing. The contrast could not be more great. And Randy Newman told me he would look from the wings while Goodman was up there on stage, and he would be kind of fearful. Goodman... The one definition of Goodman is that he would steal the show no matter what.
How many songs did he write? Do you have any idea?
Oh, it's approximately 100, but I tell you, he must have had 4 or 5 times that number, perhaps more than that in his head. He had a phonographic memory. One of the things he was best known for, and you know this from seeing him so often, is that he would pull out a song, and it was literally that he had pulled it out of his head in the moment to see if he could fit that moment with the audience. He knew so many songs and from so many genres, folk, country, blues, rock.
Gospel.
Yes, gospel. I'll Fly Away. the guy was just phenomenal as a musical encyclopedia.
Well, and I do remember seeing him a number of times where he definitely had no set list. I mean, he would just noodle around on the guitar till something struck him that he wanted to play, and then he'd just jump into it, and he would talk while he was doing that. But
and he
had
would
no
talk,
idea.
he would have fun while he was talking. And as one of his high school students, classmates, I talked to probably 100 of his high school classmates, and one of them said, he was so entertained on stage, and that couldn't help but be entertaining in itself.
Right. Well, and I did see him do the broken string routine a number of times, too.
Now, that originated with the Steve Martin tours. Steve played his guitar hard, particularly on the louder songs, and he would keep coming up short. He'd have a spare guitar, and he'd go to that. But there were times when he'd break a string on the first guitar, break a string on the second guitar, and he'd have to go a cappella.
Sure.
And he came up. He said he was out of desperation on the stage for this rabid, crowd of 15,000 that Steve Martin would get. And he had to come up with another way. And he'd break a string, and in the middle of the song, he would keep in the same cadence, and it wasn't always the same song, and he would make up lyrics that would rhyme, and just think of the tension that creates in the audience. What's going to happen next? Is he going to be able to rhyme this next line? And he's working his hands to restring the guitar at the same time. It was a virtuoso kind of routine that I don't think anybody has done before or since.
Oh, no, it was amazing. Let's talk a minute about all the activities that are going on, and people, especially today, but you say there's some more this week, so people can have a chance to see you and, well, we should say buy the book, and get to, enjoy all these wonderful stories. Now,
well, it's a celebration, and this afternoon we have what a program. And none of these events cost anything. People are welcome to come this afternoon at the Old Town School from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Roy Leonard, who had Goodman on his show so many times on WGN, is the moderator. But we have Michael Smith, author of The Dutchman and a collaborator with Goodman on so many songs. He will be there. Ed Holstein will be there. Earl Pianki will be there. We might need 2 hours just for Earl alone. And we have a folk music professor, Ron Cohen. We have somebody from the Old Town School Board, Jim Pulaski. And I might be able to get a word or two in. We'll see.
All right. Well, and I did mention earlier and played a couple songs from the CD that also comes with the book. You get a CD with the book of 19 cuts, which also includes an audio clip from an interview that Steve did in 1975. And two of the people whose songs that you've included on this album are going to be playing today a little bit.
Yes, they're going to open this up with a little bit of music. This was an astounding find of mine. I mean, it wasn't through my genius or anything like that. It was just by interviewing, and you would find these songs. People wrote tribute songs to Goodman after he died, and they've kind of languished in obscurity, and one or two may sound like a normal kind of a thing, but there are more than 25. And I was able to gather these on a CD so that people could see how Goodman's music lived on. I think we're going to play one by Harry Waller.
Right. Well, and I played Buddy Mondlak's No Choice, which I've heard him do it many times, and I had no idea that it was inspired.
Well, he started out thinking that it was about Vincent van Gogh, and then as he was writing the song, which is kind of an interesting insight to the process of writing a song, he ended up making it more about a musician, and the last verse is directly about Steve Goodman.
All right. Well, here's Harry. You want to say anything about Harry's song?
Oh, this is a very heartfelt narrative song, very much in Goodman's tradition. It tells the story of Harry's relationship with Goodman from the very moment he met him until the very last moment he saw him.
I was walking on down the street when one day I happened to meet the guy that wrote that song about the train. He showed me his brand new club. He told me how much he loved the Cubs. He took me home, fed me, played some songs, and then he gave me his seat to hear Arlo and Pete. It was too much to believe. That's the way I met Steve. He drove us to the borderline. Me, Steve Wade, and old John Prine talk about going on a crazy trip. They talked about Nancy and the girls, about the good old days at the Earl. Every now and then we'd let a few secrets slip. He took me under his wing, he taught me lots of things. It was too much to believe. That's how I got to know Steve. And Chicago's never been so cold, like the day that I was told it was all over for my friend Steve. And every day I sit and cry, every day I ask myself why did it have to leave? Every time he walked right in, he'd be wearing that silly grin, tell you the worst joke you just heard. Sometimes we met on the road, sometimes he'd be with Jethro. Those two guys were really absurd. But he became a star when he played that guitar. He was too much to believe, and that's the way I remember Steve. That last time I saw him play, you know he blew that crowd away. We made a few plans, all in vain. There's a picture there on my wall, me and Steve having a ball. I tagged along and put him on the plane. He said, don't worry, I'll be back in a hurry. There's no reason to grieve. That's the last time I saw Steve. And Chicago's never been so cold, like the day that I was told it was all over for my friend Steve. Every day I sit and cry, every day I ask myself why did it have to leave? Why did it have to leave?
Harry Waller, and was it why did he have to leave?
Yes.
And you were just telling me that Harry...
He wrote this right after Goodman died, and I believe he's only performed it once publicly. This is quite a rare track, and it's an honor for me to have it on the CD. All the musicians contributed these tracks to the CD because they loved Goodman so much.
Is he going to play it today? Or?
That's what I am told by Harry himself. But it's a live deal, and we don't know exactly what will happen until it actually happens.
I don't know if we mentioned 2 o'clock at Old Town School. It's free. We have no idea how many people are going to show up, but Clay tells me the people have come in this weekend from out of town just for this weekend.
There are people who have already been to the events from West Virginia, from Maine, from New York City, from Detroit.
Well, if you want to go today, I'd suggest getting there early if you want to make sure that you get a seat. Now, you have a couple other events still this week,
yes,
too.
In the north suburbs. Goodman went to Maine East High School, and they're having an event for him at 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, May 23rd at Maine East High School. That's just off Dempster in Park Ridge.
Is it open to the public?
Oh, of course, of course. A lot of alums have been invited, people from Steve's class of 65, but anybody certainly can show up. And Rich Engel and his wife will be providing music, playing a few Goodman songs along with a few readings from the book. But then the next night, Thursday the 24th, in Woodstock at the Stage Left Cafe of the Woodstock Opera House at 7 o'clock, we have an all-night blowout Goodman tribute. I've seen the set list and the 6 or 7 musicians who want to play. I'd be surprised we get out of there before 11 or midnight.
Who's playing, or do you know? Or?
Oh, we have a number of local Woodstock musicians, and they've made me the MC.
Oh, I wonder why. And one of the things, besides the fact that this is a very, very detailed biography of his life with all kinds of fabulous pictures and quotes and interviews. And I actually got really into reading some of the credits, And one of the things that I found really interesting was the other people who had recorded the city of New Orleans, including in other foreign languages. I mean, we knew about Arlo, of course, and Willie Nelson's another one we know about, but it's in French and German. And
it's funny, some of the foreign language versions have nothing to do with a train. They just they appropriate the melody.
Oh, really?
But it's a lovely summer day in France.
Oh, okay. All right. Have you heard them? Have you heard of
Oh, sure. You got to listen to this stuff to be able to describe it in a book.
Yeah. So it's in French, German, Dutch, Czech, I think.
I don't even know that I even found them all, but it's such a compelling melody, and it's elevator music now. City of New Orleans. You cannot escape it. Arlo made it that way, and it's been that way, and will continue that way.
There's a number of bluegrass versions there.
Oh yes, Seldom Seen did it very early on.
Country Gentleman, Theodore Bickel.
Mm-hmm.
Did Joan Baez do it?
Not that I know of, but she did cover one of Goodman's songs called Yellow Coat, one of his earlier ones, a very poignant lost love song.
Now, we queued up, we wanted to queue up a couple more, but we queued up Elvis imitators because we thought we'd do a funny one, too. So you had a story about that?
Well, sure. This was co-written by Goodman with Michael Smith, who will be at the Old Town this afternoon, Old Town School. This song, people have seen Goodman do it on Austin City Limits, and it's on a commercially released DVD from 4 years ago. But where it was released first was by one of his best friends and collaborators, Jimmy Buffett. And when Goodman wrote it, Buffett thought it would be a perfect song for him to record. But as Goodman put it, when he recorded it and released it on a 45 that was not promoted at all, Buffett was too ashamed to put his name on the label, and he instead called it Freddie and the Fish Sticks.
Oh, right, I've heard that.
And you can find this Buffett version on Buffett's 4-CD box set.
Why was he embarrassed by it?
Oh, I think that's just one of Goodman's jokes.
Okay.
Goodman, if anything, he was self-deprecating.
Oh, yes.
Here's a song I made up with a guy named Mike Smith who lives in Chicago. We wrote this song for Elvis imitators. We figured they ought to have a song. Maybe they should have a union, right? That's a tough gig, being an Elvis imitator. And Jimmy Buffett actually recorded this thing he wouldn't use his own name, though. He used Freddie and the Fish Sticks, he called us, right? That's what he called his band. So here's the song for the Elvis imitators, wherever they are tonight. Well, I walk up to the mic and then I shake my hip. Take a deep breath and put a sneer on my lip. See me on the street, you wouldn't know my name, but imitating Elvis is my claim to fame. So when they put my imitation name in lights, well, there'll be imitation good at rockin' the night. Cause I'm an Elvis imitator and I just can't stop imitating Elvis from the bottom to top. Imitate the way he walked, the way he smiled. Throw away my scarf and make the crowd go wild. Well, imitation Elvis may not be the king, but baby, it's the next best thing. Singing Viva Las Vegas in the GI blues. Won't you love me tender in my blue suede shoes? Let me be your teddy bear, cause you're too much. Baby, please surrender, cause I need your touch. Well, if you're feeling lonely, need a place to dwell, come on down to Imitation Heartbreak Hotel. Cause I'm an Elvis imitator, I just can't stop imitating. I can imitate the way he walked, the way he smiled. Throw away my scarf and make the crowd go wild. Well, imitation Elvis may not be the king, but baby, it's the next best thing. We all rock imitation. We all rock imitation. In my golden make cape and my sequin suit, pompadour haircut and my high heel boot. Imitating Elvis is the only way that I can make it through my imitation day. Though this rockin' music can't be denied, I was imitating him before he died. I'm an Elvis imitator, but just can't stop. I'm imitating Elvis from the bottom to top. I'm imitating the way he walked, the way he smiled. Oh, wave my scarf and make the crowd go wild. Well, imitation Elvis may not be the king, baby, it's the next best thing. I'm a baby, hi, money. Yes,
Well, he had wrote a lot of really clever turns on words.
He was quite the guy with wordplay, that's for
He
sure.
really was.
He's a songwriter a journalist can really like.
Yes, yeah. He had a really clever way with words. Wasn't one of them he wrote like in the hotel room? Oh,
It's called this hotel room.
Right.
And he would say, all I did was describe everything in the room and made sure it rhymed.
Right. Again, I'm talking to Clay Eals here, who is from Seattle and has written this fabulous definitive biography of Steve Goodman. I don't think we ever said the name, did we? Facing the Music. And he'll be with a panel of, lots and lots of wonderful people today at Old Town at 2 o'clock. And you can see the book and you can hear wonderful stories about Steve and some great music. There's going to be some music, but it's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of fun. How did you decide on the name?
Well, I figured Goodman-like it needed to be a pun, right? And Facing the Music is obviously, music was his life. But, we all face the music. He just had to do it much more readily and in his face and for his entire adult life. The thread of this book, the theme of it is mortality. How are we going to deal with, what do we do with our finite time that we have in this life? And so when it came to me, this pun of Facing the Music, I thought this not only fits the subject matter, but I think Goodman would like it too.
You have a website, I'm sure.
Yes, it's just my name.com, Clay Eals, ClayEals. It's got a lot of details. If you were among the 2,200 people who helped me out with the book, your name is in the acknowledgments of the book, and it's on the website. You can order the book from the website, too, and if you get it from the website, the book is too heavy to mail 2 ways in the mail for an autograph, but we're providing an autographed postcard that sort of serves as a bookmark with every book that's ordered from my site.
Wow. So what's next for you?
What's next? Oh, my. Well, to try to get back to a real day job, to bring some income into the household. This project is a labor of love, and the money aspect of it was not the first priority. I mean, if this book had to, there are very few authors out there who make a lot of money from what they do. But if it had to make a huge profit, I probably wouldn't have started the book to begin with.
Did you work on it full time?
I worked on it, yes, particularly the last 4 years. But even when I was working on it half-time, I mean, it was nights and weekends, and I mean, any definition of it would be, the last 8 or 9 years. My wife, Meg, she says, I can't tell if it's a mission or an obsession, and maybe it's a little of both.
Well, and I said possession, so we can add all of those.
I got to add that in there. That's
okay.
Good.
Well, I didn't say you were, I said what possessed you. I didn't say, okay. All right, okay. We're going to have to run out of here, but I queued up. We can hear a little of Chris Farrell's song that he wrote. What was the name of it?
Old Town, Old Friend.
It's a beautiful song. So I'm going to play a little of that. Thanks for listening. You're going to stay tuned for Northwestern softball. They're in finals. It's exciting. And I'm trying to remember who will be with me next week. With you
while you're
next
trying
week.
to remember, just while you're listening to Chris's song, be sure to listen for a line from Steve Goodman's most famous song in this particular
And thank you so much
track.
for coming up and for doing this, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Old town, old friend, there's a song in the air, something to ask me and something to share. I saw the moon in a smoky spotlight. I heard someone sing in Old Town tonight. Sometimes it's laughter and sometimes it's tears. Too many hours and most of my years reaching for something and holding on tight. Old town, old friend, I'm with you tonight. Out in this new world, it's hustle and bucks, and stay in the race, boy, or you're out of luck. But out where the dreamers are traveling light, there's still someone singing in Old Town tonight. Old Town, old friend, who knows what it will bring? But whatever comes, we'll have something to sing. Sing it all morning, all evening, and then deep in our dreams we'll sing it again. Good morning, America, good night, Irene, and all of the moments that fall in between. Out where the dreamers are traveling light, there's still someone singing in Old Town tonight. Good morning, America, good night, Irene, and all of the moments that fall in between. Out where the dreamers are traveling light, there's still someone singing in Old Town tonight. There's still someone singing